All right, guys. We are going to start covering the Industrial Revolution, and so here is some overview, some background stuff that we understand. The big picture of the Industrial Revolution is that throughout Europe, machines are going to begin replacing human labor, animal labor, in order to produce and manufacture goods. And so, um, over time, new technologies will develop, will make things more efficient and more effective and mass produced. Okay, the second thing is that Europe will become a modern industrial society. It will transition from a very agricultural and commercial society, and now it's going to be more industrial. Around the early 1800s, much of the population still was working and living in the countryside, but by the mid 1800s, so around 1850 or so, this is where industrialism has spread throughout across all Europe, and much of the population has moved already into cities. Okay, before they just lived in the countryside. And the third thing is that we're going to see economic changes come through the Industrial Revolution. More than any movement that has happened, any event that has happened in history, the Industrial Revolution revolutionized Europe's economic development and also its position in the world in terms of political and economic dominance through the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so let's look at the roots. Okay, things that have caused the Industrial Revolution. It all really began with several few things. The first one is the Commercial Revolution. This spurred great economic growth in Europe, and it came through the Age of Exploration. Okay, way back from 1500 to 1700. Okay, from the Commercial Revolution, you have basically inflation come, where prices are going up, and this stimulated production as manufacturers and merchants would get more money for their goods because they cost more now, and so the bourgeoisie got a lot of their wealth from trading and manufacturing goods, selling them, buying them, and the rise of capitalism, because capitalism as an economic system is used and implemented throughout Europe. The money attained from all the profits is accumulated as a surplus, and then you can use it to invest into new economic opportunities. Okay, the scientific revolution. So let me back up. So with capitalism, the middle class is the one who actually came to bring a lot of economic leadership in the Industrial Revolution, because they're the ones who actually put together a lot of these joint stock companies, which we talked about during the Age of Exploration, and so they're going to actually benefit a lot throughout the Industrial Revolution. Okay, the middle class. The scientific revolution. They, as you know, came up with a lot of new technologies and inventions, and through that, it had a lot of contributions to the Industrial Revolution. And we have the increase in population size. Obviously, that means there's more laborers, and that means that there is a higher demand for more consumer goods. I mean, things that people just need to buy on an everyday basis. Okay. There's more people that have money circulating around too. Okay, so last few things is the first example of industry would be the cottage industry, and so this is not in the cities, but this is in the countryside. It's in the rural areas, and so this is a major pillar of Europe's growing economy in the 18th century. And so what we're really seeing is that through the cottage industry, much of the people who live in the countryside are using and working in the cottages to supplement their income, and so many merchants will go and travel out to the countryside, into the rural areas, to find cheap labor and to get basically their goods made, and so they can get them to sell them. So if you see this diagram down here, okay, you have basically the merchant with its raw materials, okay, and then you basically bring them into the countryside town, and they get spun, and then it is weaved. Okay, all within the same countryside area. And then finally, the finished product, the cloth, is now going to be taken into town to be sold. Okay, so what do we call this? We call this the domestic system or the putting out system. And the cottage workers were usually paid by the number of pieces that they produce. So there's an incentive. That's how their wages are negotiated. The merchants would then sell it for product, and wool was, used in a lot of things, and it's a very common resource. Okay, textile. So the cottage industry was a family enterprise, very much at home. The husband is usually the weaver, the wife is usually the spinner, and essentially, this allows them to have additional income by using their time to make these things. One thing I want to say is that when they're making these things, okay, they're making common goods. Okay, they're not making luxury goods because luxury goods require more expensive materials and also a higher level of craftsmanship. These just are, pretty straightforward manual labor skills. So they don't have the skills of a master craftsman that can teach them and guide them and stuff. So a lot of merchants go to these rural towns or villages because the labor is cheaper out in the countryside compared into the city. Okay, with guild members. All right, so some of these inventions that are going to lead into more developments of how things are going to be made in factories. The first one is John Kay, 1733 flying shuttle. Basically, a weaver, as you can see here, is pushing the throw shuttle back and forth, and this means that the manpower needed is doubled, and so everything is done twice as fast. You only need one person to operate this flying shuttle, this hand loom. Okay, the second thing is James Hargreaves. He's going to invent the spinning jenny in 1764. All of this is going to review for you guys. Basically, it's hand operated. It's pretty simple. Women who were spinning, okay, they basically just move that little crank that, okay, and turn the wheel, and so it's just spinning a lot quicker. Okay, and then now the spinners are actually very fast now. Okay, and then you have Richard Arkwright. He invented the water frame, which basically improved spinning in the sense where he can put hundreds of spindles at a time and use water power, which means that the water power is more powerful than just your little hand spinning it, and these textile mills are now going to be moved to rivers. We call this hydraulic power because it's powered by water, and so basically these types of factories of where it's being used alongside the water can have a bunch of these machines going on at once, but it was a coarse and strong thread that was being made in comparison to Samuel Crompton. Samuel Crompton invents the spinning mule. The spinning mule is combining the best features of the spinning jenny and the water frame, and so he, I believe, creates even more effective machine. Check my notes. Okay. Yes, the thread that is made is finer, it is stronger and more uniform than all the other inventions. Okay, so this is where all cotton spinning is going to be done in factories now. Okay, all right, a few more other ones. Cartwright. Cartwright invents the power loom, and so by using water power, now weaving is going to be even more effective, and so one power loom, one of these machines, can basically outdo 200 hand looms that we just saw with the what John Kay invented, the flying shuttle. Okay, all right. So the cottage industry technology is also going to focus on cotton picking. So you guys know, like Whitney Cotton Gin, you guys learned about this in 8th grade, 9th grade. And you're hearing it again, interchangeable parts. Okay, rifles now can have interchangeable parts. They no longer need to be um, maintained and repaired by a certain blacksmith or gunsmith, and basically they can be replaced and parts are just interchanged back and forth, and so it's more efficient this way. Okay, and okay, here we go. So we're going to talk about why is Great Britain number one. This is a lot of review, but some of these key things we need to get down. Number one, well, it began in the 1780s. Some historians said that it starts in 1760, but that's kind of a small debate. When did it really break out? Many historians are saying now 1780s. Okay, but it did not really spread throughout England until 1830 at the earliest, and because they were the first, they didn't really have an impact upon continental Europe until after the Napoleonic Wars in 1815, which we will get to of how it spreads throughout. Okay, so there's going to be different factors. The first ones I'm covering is the geographic factors. Okay, so the geography of Great Britain allows them to have an advantage as being first in the Industrial Revolution. One is that they are being isolated. So because they are on an island, right, they are protected from all the issues and wars and battling and all these types of disputes and conflicts that are happening on the continent. Okay, so they're not being interrupted. The second thing is that they have a good supply of coal and iron. And so in northern England, that's kind of where a lot of the important sources are, and they don't need to import coal, which is going to be used for, yes, it's used for steam engines. You got to burn up that coal, okay, create steam. And also they have many waterways. So waterways, as we know, it's a canal. It's where you can transport things, but also waterways are rivers where it can be used for factories and powering machines. Okay, so throughout all of England, there are plenty of little rivers and stuff that can be transporting goods, and so it's much cheaper to ship things by water than taking it by land. Okay, until trains and stuff. Okay, so economic factors. One is England's expanding role in the Atlantic economy. Okay, up to the 1700s, they have been growing, and their navy has been growing. Right, we talk about the power of the British Navy, and so their development of ports in these different cities and foreign lands, okay, protected by the navy, allows them to build a strong commercial empire. Okay, but not just commercial. We're going to see how else that changes. Also, the establishment of the Bank of England comes in 1694, and so it's a central bank, and it becomes a very effective and one of the largest banks in Europe. There's a lot of capital that's going around because for 2 centuries, a lot of commercial activity has been going on, right, with the age of exploration and trading and merchants, all that kind of stuff. England also avoided many costly continental wars. They were involved in some, okay, but in some that they stayed out of, they could save money out of that, and a lot of money was just made in profit because of the British merchants and landowners, because of the success and how they've won a lot of these wars too. Okay. Okay, we also have the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs, what is an entrepreneur? It is a social class of inventive, highly motivated individuals who possess technological skill that are willing to take risks. Okay, rewind. I'm sure you need to rewind that. Yes, many of these entrepreneurs are young men. They are usually landowners. They have capital, and so they are of the middle class, and because they become so wealthy, they are eventually able to even elevate to the status of nobility because they're so wealthy. And also, we have the colonial empire that is built by Great Britain. What happens when you have these colonies, these settlements, then the country is able to access and attain a lot of raw materials, natural resources that can be used then to build things, make things, used by in the factories. Then after that, you sell it back, more profit, and just kind of a cycle. And yes, there's a growing market too. So natural resources, raw materials, and now it's a new market. You can use that to sell things out to these places. Okay. All right. The social aspects as to what leads to Great Britain being number one. Well, we talked about this on Monday. We talked about how there is the agricultural revolution, and as a social factor, this is very vital. Why? Because we talked about how there's a population increase. With the population increase, it means that more people are ready to work. With more people ready to work, it means it's going to be cheaper because there's an abundance of people, right? So what we're seeing is that through the agricultural revolution and enclosure, right, the enclosure movement, there are less farmers that are able to do the same amount of work, same amount of productivity because of all the new methods and new technologies, right? Fewer farmers, larger lands, larger farms can still feed a large number of people, a growing population, okay? And so with more people also means demand for goods is going to increase as well. And so these people are looking for work, and eventually they have to go to cities, they work in factories, and they're going to be the industrial proletariat, the working class. And they are free to move around and find work as they need to live, right? And they are going to make up this new class, this new role in society of wage earners. Before, farmers basically didn't earn a wage; they just farm and they just eat what they eat, sell what they sell. But now wage earners are earning money based upon their output, okay, or their clock in, clock out of hours. All right. So last thing is going to be political factors of why Great Britain is number one. Well, the role of government is that they were very open to industrial development, okay, and they realized that there's a lot of economic opportunities, and so many financial groups, financial institutions, organizations were ready to make loans out so they can generate more profit. And so if we remember what type of political system, political government that England has, they have a limited constitutional monarchy, which meant that the government is not trying to stop any of these middle class entrepreneurs from making profit because they're trying to generate, right? Adam Smith, they're trying to generate their own profit, but at the same time it's benefiting society. As in the case with a lot of French and Russian societies, they actually were middle class is doing other things. For example, in France, right, the middle class basically was leading a lot of the revolutionary movements. So then they weren't focused on making money so much; they're looking to change their country, okay, which is just as important. So a lot of the successful outcomes of the wars, especially with the Napoleonic Wars in Europe, right, they remained economically stable. And also with parliaments, okay, they have two houses, right? The House of Lords, right, upper class nobility. Then you have the House of Commons, where a lot of middle class would be involved in Parliament in trying to gain government cooperation, government support, and from that they are able to pass a lot of legislation. Okay, so the legislation that is passed, one example is the Bubble Act. Okay, so a lot of these laws are passed so that they can really protect entrepreneurs, business owners, factory owners, and industrialists that are looking to grow their industries. Okay, so the Bubble Act basically repealed the bans upon joint stock companies. So joint stock companies are now lawful and good, right, and allowed. Joint stock companies are just a refresher. Okay, we are all joining together and we are investing into this company so that it's not like a severe economic hit if I just started as myself as an entrepreneur, but we're all pulling our money together. Okay, the Lowe's Act allowed for limited liability for business owners, and also there were some repeals of the Navigation Acts and Corn Laws, which meant that this would decrease mercantilism's effect on certain industries. Okay, whether it's agricultural or trade. Okay, all right. So that's it for today. Yeah, we're gonna continue on talking about Industrial Revolution. moving forward. A lot of this is just review. Okay, so just make sure we know this, and then we're good to go. All right.